I am Cristin Heyns-Bousliman. I lead the HR consulting practice at REDW. My background, I am an employment lawyer by trade. Found that career to be very reactive. I'm a much more proactive person. And so what I love to do now is help employers stay out of legal trouble. And so if that sounds like something fun to you, let me know. I'll tell you all about HR consulting. It's a good time, I think. So today we are going to talk about AI and HR and shaping the future of our work. Our objective today is to learn about the types of AI currently being utilized by HR professionals and specifically how they assist at various levels in HR. We're going to talk a little on the future of AI in HR. Wow, this is going to be a good one, you guys. Then we're going to talk about the risks of using AI in your work, both from an ethical perspective as well as the legal risks. So also, Professor Nguyen requested that I wrap up with a brief discussion on the implications of the current administration's executive orders banning certain DEI initiatives. So I will touch on that very quickly at the end. You're going to see me relying heavily on my notes today because we have a very short period of time to discuss a whole lot of really important stuff. So I want to make sure that I don't veer off course. I tend to do that. I love to have conversations with the audience. So please ask questions or save your questions for the end, but just know I'm trying really hard to stay within the hour time frame. So I want to start with a show of hands from the group, and anyone who's a professor or administrator in the room can cover their eyes and ears. That's fine with me. But how many of you are regularly using AI to perform your schoolwork or your work? Be honest. Okay. Good. I want you to know I think that is wonderful, and I want you to keep doing that. Okay. We want to be smart about the way we do it, but I want you to keep doing it. And the main reason for that is that everything that I am saying to you today is coming from a dinosaur who is trying to learn this in real time while doing the work. You have the opportunity to come on board with employers and know how to leverage AI. And I think that can really set you apart. You need to be confident in your ability to do that, and your ability to speak up and say, hey, I can see an opportunity to innovate here. But you're going to have to deal with a lot of that's not the way we've always done it, people. And so be prepared for that. And if you ever need advice on how to approach those older generations in the workforce, I'm your gal. I'd be happy to help you. But I think that it's really important to remember that should be welcomed in your workplace. And we all want to learn from you. I thought it was really entertaining as I was preparing this presentation that I had a feeling most of you would know way more about this than I do. So correct me if I'm wrong. I look forward to it. I welcome feedback. Okay, so what types of AI are we already using in HR? Okay, I think it's first important to remember what we're talking about when we say AI. Okay, because that is an entire category of technology, and that's like you asking me, where did you buy the shirt you're wearing? Which I would agree with because it's cute and I like it. But it's like me responding, oh, thanks. Yeah, I got it at the stores. Not very helpful, right? AI is a much broader term. So we're going to try to narrow it down a little bit to what we're talking about today. So deep learning AI models are driving some wonderful developments in HR, given their ability to analyze more than just quantitative data. They can pull together more than just numbers, okay? It's often really hard to quantify human behavior, as you might know. I know that our finance team at work would really love it if I could somehow find a way to assign a number to every single human behavior, but it is not in fact possible. So qualitative responses in HR, oh my gosh, you guys, it's going to be real bad today. In HR can be analyzed by AI and compiled by AI. So it's super, super helpful to us in that regard. So deep learning models are responsible for generative AI, which is a really broad category for AI that creates new content. So that's your text messages, your images, your documents, your music, your code, whatever that is. And then within generative AI is natural language processing technology. And that has been used to create LLMs, large language models, which is your ChatGPT, which is the most commonly used form of AI, especially in the work that we're performing. So these models are the primary way AI supports HR professionals in their daily work, both creating documents and other helpful materials. But we also have conversational AI. And so conversational AI models are another type of generative AI that are being used to support HR professionals. These understand and respond to human language in a somewhat natural way. Has anyone interacted with an AI chatbot recently? Okay, how was your experience?
Kept eating. Yeah,
Yes.
it does this thing, hallucination.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it kept repeating the same answer to you. Right, exactly. I had the same experience recently. I ordered Grubhub, and the Grubhub app assigned my order to 2 different drivers. So when I would look at my order status, it kept bouncing back and forth between the drivers. And I was like, I just want to know if my food's coming. So I went into their chat and asked, where's my food? And I kept getting the same response over and over and over again. And no matter how I asked the question, I kept getting the same response, which is it's being picked up, which was not helpful at all. And so it was a real surprise when it arrived. It was very exciting. So conversational AI models, not perfect. We're not there yet, but very helpful in AI for certain things. So we'll get to that in a bit. And then what I'm really, really looking forward to is the agentic AI. So that's the piece. We're going to talk more on it as I go through the presentation. But the ability to take the initiative and perform tasks, so not continue repeating to you, but actually think and move forward with different options. Very exciting. So tell me a little bit about your understanding of HR as a profession. So what kinds of HR jobs are you interested in this room? Or do you know? You don't have to know.
Well,
Don't know yet. Okay. All right, cool. Well, I'm just going to go through a little bit so you can kind of understand what this looks like, because I know we don't always know these things. So your entry-level HR jobs are things like HR assistant or coordinator, and that's where you learn a whole lot. Benefits administrator, where you help whatever company you're with administer their benefits function. And payroll specialist, everyone knows what that is because we all like to get paid. Then there are mid-level roles. There's generalists. And in smaller employers, there's usually a generalist handling all aspects of HR, and that's why the title is generalist. Specialists, larger employers have more resources. They tend to have the ability to allow people to specialize in different things. So that might be things like recruiting or employee relations or compensation. Then you have an HRIS specialist, which is like HR's version of IT. That's the person who's managing your system. That is your system of record for all HR matters. And then there's an employee relations manager. Okay, and that is the high risk area. Mid-size and larger employers want one person or one team in charge of employee relations because that's where you're looking at ways that we might get to. Okay. Then we have our senior or executive roles, which are the fun ones, right? That's where you're in charge. The HR manager. So an HR manager has kind of replaced the traditional office manager role in HR. And so that's the person who oversees all of HR's daily operations for smaller employers. The size of the company and the complexity of the company determine whether you have an HR manager or an HR director. That's the idea there. Okay. I will tell you that HR managers are the most overworked clients that we have in HR consulting. Once you have 15 or more employees, most of the complex regulations apply. And so HR managers are very, very busy. HR directors are your top level and your mid to large employers. They develop and implement HR strategies for the organization. They manage the HR budget. They address legal issues. They work directly with other executives. And then you have your VP of HR, CHRO, Chief People Officer level. And that's going to be in larger organizations. And they are the ones that are responsible for HR operations across the organization, developing very high level strategies, staffing plans, training, compensation, culture, all of that. And then also, lots of organizations have someone like me with my skill set, and that's going to be like a general counsel with employment law background. And so that's also fun. Some employers have all of these different roles. So know that there's large employers may have all of these or a few of these. But I want you to be thinking about those in the back of your mind as we start talking about the different types of AI, like which ones of those positions are being automated. Be thinking about that as you're planning your career, okay? And then I also want you to know, this is a important, albeit cynical note that I will share with you, which is HR is often seen as a cost center. So you have to remember that it's frequently very minimally staffed, and innovation, cost savings, and efficiency are lifelines in HR. So with that, let's talk about how AI is helping HR. So we'll start at the beginning of the employee lifecycle. That seems like a great place to start. So recruitment. The main challenge with recruitment and talent acquisition is time. So when you have a competitive job market and you are placing ads and pulling in candidates, it takes a lot of time to review applications, to review resumes, to screen candidates. Meanwhile, those candidates are all applying for other jobs. And so the faster you can narrow down who you want to talk to and get them in the door for an interview and potentially get them onboarded, the more likely you are to grab the top talent. And so AI is super, super useful in this context. So first, large language models help quickly create position descriptions and job postings for vacant positions. That is one great use of AI. With the right prompts, you're going to hear me probably say that a lot because you need to make sure that you are very specifically prompting the LLM. But you can also use it to make your job postings more friendly. You can use it to make them more attractive to to applicants. I would absolutely caution against using AI to set compensation, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit. But you can screen and source candidates with AI, which is super cool. You can take all of the resumes you receive, and like I said, that qualitative data, you can pull it all in, you can post it into a large language model and ask it to tell you which candidates have certain minimum qualifications and very, very quickly eliminate the ones that don't. You always have to consider the accuracy of the result is dependent upon your prompt. Said it again. But be sure to ask specifics. And so if you're looking for someone who has 4 or more years of experience, or if you're looking for someone with a bachelor's degree or equivalent experience, you need to make sure that you spell all of that out and make it really, really clear. Post-interview, you can use deep learning models to compile all that qualitative and quantitative data from the interview feedback from the panel of people who interviewed and create a report on each candidate. Super cool. You can automate communication to candidates, another real big time saver. So the candidates you decide to eliminate, get AI to draft that email for you, get that email out the door. And so then you have narrowed down your field. So that's an area where that agentic AI I was talking about is going to be huge. It's going to be absolutely amazing when you could just create a workflow for something like that and not even have to think about it. And then finally, I think a really important part of the recruitment process that you can leverage AI for is mitigating bias. And so what I mean by that is when you drop those resumes into your large language model and ask it to tell you which candidates are most qualified, you can ask it, I want you to tell me which candidates are most qualified based solely on their education and experience. And what it will do for you is it will check in with your implicit bias. Because if you didn't know it, it's really fascinating. Resumes with white sounding names have a 50% higher callback rate. That bias is real. And I don't think that 50% of people out there are running around trying to be racist about their review. But I think that it's really interesting to know that that is an implicit bias that exists. So if you have your AI pull the most qualified candidates, you know that you're skipping over that. We're going to talk at the end of this presentation a little bit about how AI can also be kind of biased. So you do have to make sure you give it the right prompt, but asking it to consider solely education and experience, you should be able to skip past that bias and really get the most qualified candidates. So I love that. I think that that's really cool. All right. We can also use AI for onboarding and team member experience. I will tell you right now that HR teams are swamped. Told you that they're typically underfunded. So HR teams don't have as much time as they would like to think about things like personalized onboarding, to think about things like culture initiatives and all the fun reasons that we all went into HR. Because we thought we were going to be there to help. We thought we were going to be there to do fun things with the teams. And really, you end up constantly bogged down in the less fun part of the work. So this is so cool. So we've been using it to personalize onboarding. So for example, if you onboard onto my team, you get a personalized binder of all of the information along with a gift card to get a Starbucks because we're 100% remote. So we know that you're not going to be in the office getting onboarding treatments and treats. So we have a way of creating a personalized onboarding experience. But what's really cool is we're also developing a conversational model. So REDW is developing a chatbot that is going to allow team members to ask basic questions. So we're going to load all of our policies, all of our procedures, all of our benefits information, all of that to where team members can have a conversation with the chatbot and get quick answers so that the HR team is not having to dig through benefits administration information to answer questions. They can be more focused on this, on more fun things. Performance management. If you are not already working in HR, you will learn this soon enough. Humans are terrible at giving performance feedback. They don't like it. It's uncomfortable. It's nobody's favorite thing. So what I love is that performance management tools are adopting AI. So our firm uses Talent Quest, and I really, really like it. So what it has done is it's used AI assistants to generate performance review feedback. So if I go into a performance evaluation, I can type in what I really think of the person. And then it will recommend the appropriate, compliant, and constructive way of saying those things. And this is a huge relief for HR practitioners because the thing is the HR professional, more likely than not, does not get to review all performance evaluations before they are provided to the team. And so this is a nice way that you have some support from your AI bot, okay? And then the other thing that's happening is personalized training. So to all of those who raised their hands and said that they are using AI every day in their work or in their schoolwork, have you used it to create your own podcasts yet? Who has? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Excellent. I think that's my favorite use of AI, honestly. I think it's so cool. And I actually considered doing it today, but then I thought you might be disappointed in me. I'm like, by the way, Chris, I'm not coming. I'm just sending you I'm going to send you the podcast I made out of my presentation. But it is really, really cool because it is a way that you can very quickly develop personalized training for someone. You can take, let's say that they had some performance feedback that was negative about a specific technical area of their work. You can take the feedback and you can ask the AI to create a really fantastic training for them that is specific to exactly what they need. So I think that that's a wonderful performance management tool. And again, something you would never have time to do as a full-time HR professional. You just would never have time. So
yeah, to be completely honest, I was listening to my podcast on the way to class, preparing for today's event too.
Oh,
so yeah, exactly the same.
Right. Yeah, it's so cool. I know my husband's amazing. He has one that he can ask it questions. I haven't done that yet. That's just, it's so, so cool. So definitely highly recommend that in the HR setting. And then of course you can enhance goal setting as well. And so this is really, how many of you are familiar with SMART goals? Right? Okay. That's a thing. Yes, that's a thing now. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound goals. So you can put in, you can have your team members put into AI, you know, here's what my company is asking me. These 3 areas that I need to set goals, and here's what I do. Here's my job description. How can I be impactful on these goals? And it can create you some really great SMART goals around the firm-wide goals. So pretty cool. Employee engagement and retention. So our HR consulting practice frequently performs engagement studies for employers. This is a big deal now. course. We all want to know that our teams are happy, that our teams are engaged and aren't planning on leaving. And we want to know what we can do to improve engagement if necessary. And so what we do as an HR consulting practice is we gather qualitative and quantitative questionnaire feedback, and we're able to utilize AI to support us in creating a really awesome, realistic picture of the employer's culture, as well as their team member engagement and turnover risk. And so this has really, really streamlined that process. What's great about that is it's given us the ability to offer those services for a much lower flat fee. So more employers can have that information and be supportive of their teams. And we are also in the process of developing our own deep learning models to assist with specific projects, which is super cool. So we're going to house the entire universe of all of the similar projects we've done in the past, so that we'll be able to take employer A says, I want an engagement study, and we'll be able to say, okay, I'm going to utilize this AI model to not only compile the information we've gathered from you, but I'm going to use all of the other employers that we worked with in the past to be able to show you where you stand. And that's pretty cool. That'll be really interesting data to have, definitely.
True.
And then obviously HR analytics. This one seems pretty simple, considering that's exactly what AI does. So we use the same techniques in our consulting practice for projects like HR assessments, organizational assessments, executive 360-degree evaluations, comprehensive compensation and classification studies. Again, don't use AI for compensation. I'll get to that in just a moment. But it is really cool to see. So internal HR teams can pull data from their HRIS system and performance management platform and put it into the AI and slice it and dice it to gain all kinds of insight into their workforce for various reasons. And so you can think about turnover is a statistic that we've looked at a lot to say, okay, it's expensive, right, to hire and retrain people. And so we want to reduce turnover. Well, that's a great way to look at turnover if you're looking at it quantitatively. But if you start looking at it qualitatively, you get a lot more information. Maybe we want to know more about our turnover from a perspective of how many people were on performance improvement plans. Maybe those are people that we wanted to leave. Maybe it's all good turnover. And maybe that means we need to look at how are we hiring people? Are we doing the right things? Are we bringing on the right people? If our turnover is high, but we're happy everyone left, sounds like we need to look at something else. Same thing goes for what is the age and the level of the individuals leaving? And can we use AI to better understand, do we have a succession planning problem? And should we really be focusing on that? So there's really cool qualitative stuff you can get out of your turnover data that we weren't really able to access before, at least not within a ton of work. This makes it so much faster. Okay. So many great insights. And then another one that you can use it for is analyzing things like compensation compression. And what that means is when you have a workforce, let's say you have a workforce that your starting wage is minimum wage and minimum wage increases. And suddenly your minimum wage earners are earning the same amount of money as their supervisor. And so that's called pay compression. And that's where everything just crunches up as it goes up the ladder. And so you can use AI models to analyze that pay compression and help you generate a plan of how to resolve it. Because I promise you, when you get into the workforce, the plan is not, everybody just gets a raise. That's not how it works. So, all right. And then, of course, the most common way that AI is being used in HR, I think, is these LLMs are super, super helpful when it comes to drafting policies. And that's especially if you prompt the model with compliance specifics. So things like the number of employees, the geographic location where they work, things like that. You can get some really, really decent policies out of AI that don't require a lot of changes. You always need to consider limiting the resources available to the AI to reputable sources. So highly recommend asking it to consider things like SHRM, state and federal laws, local laws, not allowing it just to run wild because there's a lot of garbage out there that you don't want pulled in. It's also important to note AI is going to get you started here but a compliance review is absolutely necessary. So this is not an area where it's just going to kick out exactly what you need. And then, of course, you want to make sure you adapt the voice of your policies to the common tone of your organization. Is it a friendly organization? Is it a very structured, very conservative organization? You want to make sure that that is also addressed. And then AI is a wonderful, wonderful tool to develop templates for internal use. So things like interview guides. I'm a huge fan of interview guides because it makes sure that anyone that is interviewing candidates for your organization is not asking the naughty list questions. Nobody asks, oh, are you planning on having a family someday? Or things like that. So if you create really strong interview guides, you can drive brilliant, interesting conversations without asking any of those naughty list questions. Same goes with FMLA and ADA communications. So you still have to understand the law, you still have to use the right forms, all of that good stuff. But if you're going to be communicating with team members, you can create templates utilizing AI. And then what I love about a template is then you know you're treating every single team member the same because you're using the same communication. All right. Now we get to agentic AI, which is the thing I was talking about earlier that I'm just super, super excited about. So agentic AI is a new class of AI that can act autonomously on goals. It can learn from outcomes, and it can adapt to changing conditions without constant human intervention. So I heard a great example of this. I got to go to a conference in South Carolina earlier this year and learned from a guy that knows a whole lot more about AI than I do. And he gave the example that I could open my phone and basically tell my agentic AI model, you know what, I'm thinking I want to have steak for dinner tonight. I want to eat at 6:00. I'm going to be eating in downtown Charleston, South Carolina. And I plan to bring 3 friends with me. And I need something that has gluten-free offerings on the menu. And my agentic AI a few minutes later will tell me that it made me a reservation for 4 people at Marbled and Finn, and it will recommend that I order the dry-aged ribeye with the gluten-free macaroni and cheese. I don't know about you guys, but I need that in my life. That sounds fantastic. But think about how that could translate into HR. And right now, the agentic AI is in its pilot or exploratory phases in HR. But the goal is going to be to free HR professionals from those repetitive administrative tasks. So that will allow them to focus more heavily on the proactive, culture-centered work. That is the work that does get put on the back burner. And also, I will say, the thing that derails an HR professional's day more than anything else are the employee relations issues. And AI is, of course, never going to help with that because, as I like to say, people are going to people. And so you have to be there for it. And so what's great is then all of those repetitive processes are out of the way. You can focus on people when they're peopling and still have time for the culture side. And so I think this is going to be really, really fantastic. So examples of this, things like AI agents orchestrating multi-departmental onboarding workflows. That would be so funny to update it. I told him a funny story before this that I had a presentation not too long ago that was about stress management and having difficult conversations. And in the middle of my presentation, my computer shut down to perform an update. And so I had to work through my own stress management techniques in front of the audience. So anyway, very cool though. So it can orchestrate multi-departmental onboarding workflows. It could deliver that personalized new hire training. So how cool would it be if a new hire gets into the system and they say, yep, I understand this, and this. I don't really know this. And it automatically adjusts their day. I think that would be so, so helpful. It can track paperwork. It can track electronic signatures. You don't have to remember to go back and remind. Especially, I think about things like the I-9. So I-9s have to be completed within 3 days of the first day of work. And it's probably one of the most frequently forgotten things because you've got everything else going on onboarding a team member. And so how nice for that to just be in the background running on its own. There's a little bit of that now with HRIS systems, but I'm excited for the idea of this agentic AI just pulling together the entire personnel file and just being like, there you go. How great is that? I also love the idea of using agentic AI for things like assigning IT equipment. And so if you've got an issue with your computer or your monitor or something like that, being able to go in, explain what's going on, and the agentic AI knows which thing you have, knows what works with your laptop, knows exactly what you need, and assigns you a new one and ships it out. And not one single person had to touch that. So useful. Getting everybody more time in their day. Another one that I would love would be an AI agent tracking a constant feedback approach to performance management. And so what would be very cool about that is if team members and managers can go in and just do performance journal. If they can just go ahead and add something like, today I spoke with this person about this. The team member says, today I'm feeling kind of icky. I'm not enjoying my job, whatever else. And this could recognize patterns of disengagement or underperformance and then offer real-time coaching or training to the team member and the manager. Like, how amazing would that be?
Yeah.
I just warms my little employment lawyer heart. And then, of course, the ultimate agentic AI experience is going to be when we actually work alongside digital teammates. And that will be really wild because managers will have to learn how to manage not only their human teammates, but their AI teammates.
Yeah.
And then, of course, ensuring compliance because AI only knows what it knows and it can sometimes pull garbage information. And so we have to make sure that our AI teammates are behaving themselves too. Pretty crazy. All right. There are, of course, inherent risks of using AI in HR, just like there are in anything anywhere else. So let's see, I can get you one of these. What are your you one of these? So pen. Yes, pen is what we hold on. Like she's in charge. Just here you go. Great. Let's get somebody back here. There you go. You do have a pen. Look at that. Look at it. Okay. All right. So given four of you a sticky note. Now, what I'd like for you to do, I want you to write down the name of a dog and the name of a cat.
Oh,
You have like 10 seconds. This shouldn't be hard. This is literally allowed to name that any cat. All right. Everybody good?
Yeah.
Named your animals? Cool. All right. So for the dog's name, who wrote Hoka? Nobody wrote Hoka? But that's my dog's name. Oh, I didn't ask you to write my dog's name. Who wrote Lily for the cat? No one wrote Lily, but that's my mom's cat's name. Okay, what names did you write? JJ was my mom's other cat's name. That's weird. Okay, JJ and Garfield. Very good names. What about you? What did you name your pets back there?
Rena and Maddie.
Oh, okay, I like that. Nina and Danny. Okay, and over here, what did you name your pets?
John and Roxy.
Jack and Roxy. Great names. And you?
The dog, Alex, the cat, Cookbugs.
Perfect. Oh, that's darling. Okay. So why is it that you didn't write the names I was thinking of?
There was nice
Should before eat. Yeah, good.
There was nice captions you did.
There was no instruction, sure. But why did you pick the names you picked?
Doesn't matter.
Because it's in your head. Exactly right. Maybe you have a pet with those names. Right? No, those are just... All right. Well, I just wanted to let you know, large language models are exactly like you. Okay? And what that means is that they have life experiences that lead them to choose their answers. I have life experiences that lead me to choose mine. And so if I don't tell you exactly what I'm looking for, you're going to build on your experience and be like, JJ sounds like a great name for a dog. Okay? And so what I want you to think about is that you can get wildly different results from the same AI. And the weirdest thing is the AI also knows you. So if you go on your ChatGPT on your phone and ask it a question, you're going to get a totally different answer than if I ask it. Has anyone done the drunk best friend challenge? Okay, so after this is your assignment after this. Okay, you're going to go onto your ChatGPT and you're going to ask it, give me a pep talk as if you were my drunk best friend. It is going to make you feel really, really good and terrify you at the same time because it knows you better than you realize. And it's going to say things that are specific to you. So just remember, when you are using AI, there is a garbage in, garbage out situation going on. Okay. And I think all of your names were perfect and are not garbage at all. But the point is that whatever the AI that you are dealing with has learned, whether it's right or wrong, it is going to use because all AI is finishing your sentence.
Right.
How many of you have attempted to type the F word into your phone and it changed it to duck?
Duck.
Did you mean to say duck? Right. That's all AI is doing. It's just finishing your thought. Okay. So just make sure that you remember it doesn't really know everything and it has a lot of sources that it can pull from that are absolutely nonsense. So I mentioned earlier, you should never use AI to set compensation. The reason for that is exactly what I just talked about. There is too much crowdsourced data available to large language models. So there's too much information from either employees who want their employer to pay more, so they've put that out there, or disgruntled employees who want to claim their employer paid them nothing. And so it's going to be really, really hard to get market competitive compensation just by searching an AI model. So you can purchase AI models, you can purchase software that will only draw upon surveys that are worthwhile and have real information, but those surveys cost a lot of money. So they're not available when you're searching. Those are locked down. Okay. So just remember, ChatGPT cannot do that. Bias and discrimination. So I mentioned earlier that AI can help us when we're reviewing resumes. It can save us from some implicit bias. But depending on the universe of information your AI model is using, it can also perpetuate and even amplify biases from historical data. So we have to be really careful there. It learns from everything, even things that are wrong. And then there's data privacy and security vulnerabilities. This is what you'll hear about most because your IT teams will be strong. As the HR person, you are the keeper of the secrets. You are the chief adult in the room most of the time, which means that you have a lot of personal identified information at your fingertips. So you have to be very, very careful when you are utilizing AI to create documents for you, to create templates, or to take that information, all that qualitative data, and bring it and give you a report. You need to make sure that no one's personal identifying information is in there because there are security risks associated with that. I will tell you that there are geo-fenced AI models. So the REDW AI model that I get to use has been geo-fenced so that no information can get out of it. But you still have to be really careful. Don't put in private information. And then as a person who has to deal with people when they are peopling, it is also important to remember there is no world where we will ever be able to automate everything. And that is because of the loss of the human element. HR is involved in the most challenging, most personal, most painful workplace experiences. So it's really, really important that you remember you should balance the need for efficiency and ease of administration with the need for human interaction. So always be thinking about, is this a space? Yes, maybe I can automate this, but is it something I should automate? Okay. And the goal is to automate processes that don't require the human touch. And that way, that gives us a lot more time to be there for the things that do require it. Okay. So before I move on, any questions about AI in HR? And I keep thinking about them too. Sorry. So I'll go ahead and move on then just to the quick touch on the executive orders and DEI. I could talk for another 2.5 hours about this, and I'm trying really hard to keep any opinions out of it. But I did want to just have a real brief discussion on the impact of the 2025 executive orders on DEI programs. So in January and February of this year, President Trump issued multiple executive orders aimed at dismantling diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives across the federal government, among federal contractors, and to the extent that the federal government can control it, within private employers. So there are 2 executive orders that I didn't list here. Those are 14168, if you want to go read them, it's great reading, or 14242. And so those mandated federal agencies adopt a binary definition of sex and prohibited funding of programs promoting gender ideology, quotes, and prohibiting the Department of Education from funding DEI or gender ideology programs in schools. So those were sort of tangentially related to employment, but I wanted to talk more about the 2 here that had the most impact on employers. So 14173, the title of it is Ending Illegal Discrimination and Restoring Merit-Based Opportunities. So this executive order revoked prior government mandates underpinning affirmative action and diversity programs, including key executive orders and reporting requirements for federal contractors. I don't know if anyone's had any experience with that, but federal contractors used to have a huge project where they had to create their affirmative action plans. And that was something they would have to hire consultants to do, and it was a really, really big deal and a challenging thing to pull together. And so that's what this is referring to. And this one applies to all federal agencies, contractors, and recipients of federal grants. And so that's not necessarily just those government contractors. There's lots and lots and lots of nonprofits and other entities that receive federal grants. So what it says is that they must cease race, sex, and identity-based preferences, mandates, or programs, including hiring quotas, diversity requirements, and DEI training, ensuring that every employment, contracting, and grant decision is strictly merit-based and complies with long-standing civil rights law. The order also directs increased federal scrutiny and enforcement against any remaining discriminatory DEI practices in both public and private sectors. The private sector piece there we'll get to in a minute. It calls on educational institutions to comply with the Supreme Court's prohibition on race-based admissions. Then there's 14151, which is called Ending Radical and Wasteful Government DEI Programs and Preferencing. And this executive order instructs all federal agencies to immediately terminate offices, positions, programs, trainings, grants, and policies related to diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, and environmental justice, eliminating any mandated goals or preferences based on identity. Here, agencies were instructed to review and revise all employment practices so that only merit and performance, not DEI factors, are considered. And they must report past DEI-related expenditures and contractors to the Office of Management and Budget. The order's purpose was to remove what it calls illegal and wasteful discrimination, ensuring federal resources serve all Americans equally, and eliminating preferential treatment or identity-based programs throughout the federal government. I have a friend who had to comply with this and had to go through their policies and procedures and referred to it as we had to go through our policies and procedures and cross things out. Stupid. That was his words, not mine. So while, like I said, primarily focused on the public sector, the executive orders had private sector implications where they actually direct the Attorney General of the United States to identify and recommend enforcement actions against private companies with DEI programs. And the way that they're doing that is basically looking to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And the EEOC is responsible for enforcing anti-discrimination laws. So it's not a crazy reach to say that agency is responsible for this. And so it's an interesting approach to that agency because they don't typically go out and try to like ferret out these types of things. They wait for employees to file what's called a charge of discrimination and say, hey, I'm experiencing something discriminatory at work. So this was a little bit different to say, we want you to actually go searching for this. And then if you heard what I said with regard to that second executive order, that you have to report that you had these DEI programs in the past, or that you spend money on these DEI programs. So it does seem like kind of creating a list of employers to go ahead and go after because they were doing it in the past. So that doesn't feel great. But some of you might be wondering why that's so problematic. And that's a perfectly honest way to look at it, because really what it's saying is we want to reward individual initiative, skills, performance, and hard work. I don't think anyone in this room feels that shouldn't be the case. But the challenge is whether we have done enough DEI training while it was allowed, that we can be confident that those in charge of handing out those rewards aren't going to be driven by their own implicit biases. And if not, how will it impact those who were previously protected by the DEI policies and practices? And so the reason that DEI existed in the first place was because we don't, as humans, for whatever reason, always do the right thing all the time. We don't. And so I know I mentioned earlier how white names are 50% more likely to receive a callback on a job application than Black sounding names. So that's perfect proof. We don't do the right thing all the time. And so I will say the prohibitions against discrimination in the workplace still exist. But obviously they weren't effective enough to begin with, that we didn't need this additional training, this additional support, this additional understanding of how to ignore those implicit biases and recognize the value of diversity in the workplace. And so, we have tons of statistics. I could go on and on and on about representation in the workplace, especially women and minorities that are negatively impacted and excluded from certain industries when we don't have these types of policies in place. And I'm the first to agree that we've come a long way. We have come a long way. But we are certainly in the middle of that journey, I think. And so killing these programs, I do have concerns that killing them with nothing to replace them is going to take us back. There are concerns for that. But I also don't believe that everyone's a racist. I do believe we all have implicit biases that made you name your dog JJ and they mine Hoka. Like, we just have our own experiences. And so we have to be thoughtful about that. But I do want to say, in response to these executive orders and the changes that they have implemented, just remember there are lots and lots of protections against discrimination. So there's a whole slew of protected classes covered not only by Title VII, but also by many federal laws and state laws. And so the removal of DEI programs, I think, I told you what I think. I think it will take us back, but I also think we're going to see a lot more of the existing discrimination framework being leveraged. And so I think we're going to see more microaggression cases, and that's where the evidence of the implicit bias adds up to the point where it actually can't stand up to be harassment or discrimination. I think that we'll start seeing more of that. And as HR professionals, it's really, really hard, because some of those things, someone will come and report something to you that really does sound like they're just being sensitive because it's so small. But when it happens day after day after day after day, and it starts to build up to show you that there's actual bias there, it's going to be on the HR professionals to be the ones to recognize that that's happening and to do something about it. Because you're going to get pushback from leadership saying, well, but that doesn't sound like, that's not a cut and dry case of sexual harassment or discrimination. And so it's going to be an interesting time without without DEI? Questions, anyone? Thoughts? Heckling? Tell me you know more about AI than I do, because you do.
I don't, but I do have a question for you. So I was wondering about the possibility of using AI to assist with performance evaluation. And your example of like a naughty list of questions you can't ask in an interview. If the interview is recorded, you've got tons of data there that could potentially be analyzed by an AI model to assess that interviewer's quality of delivering those questions. Is it being used in that way?
So you're talking to an employment lawyer, not a data scientist. And so I'll tell you, I would never in a million years encourage you to record that interview. But yeah, absolutely. There's no reason that you couldn't do that. There's no, I mean, anywhere that we can gain information about human behavior, where we can use AI to streamline, to take all that information. The way I suggested it was to take everyone's notes from the interview and put those into an AI model and create reports about each candidate, because you'd be able to see, the AI model would know, you could let it know the gender, the race, the age, everything about each person that was interviewing, and then pull it together and be able to see a lot of interesting data about people's impressions. So
would you have the same recommendation for performance evaluation meetings that you would recommend that they be recorded? It seems to me that it could actually protect the organization if you do so.
Sure could.
Yeah. It could go either way, right?
Right, exactly. It could go either way. And it's just really challenging because, we live in a world of cancel culture where, I have to be nervous that it's being recorded today, because what if something I say gets taken out of context, right? And so I think that it's hard to imagine a workplace where you told your leaders and your team members that everything they did had to be recorded. I would love that.
Because it seems, at least from my own experience, people are recording meetings with reckless abandon. And those data are sitting somewhere. And someone could have access to them. We could use those data for good, or they could be potentially used against us.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, that's always the balance, which is where I think the part of the performance management that I talked about making sure that when people are underperforming, we are getting them the coaching and training they need, but also when leaders are underperforming and not doing a great job of performance management, that we're getting them the coaching that they need as well. I think that's where really the focus should be. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it's going to be. So, my concern is, will it be eliminating a lot of entry-level human resources jobs with that leaders them into making the field harder to bust?
Right. And I think that is, it's an appropriate concern. I know that it's a concern for me because consulting, we hire very few entry-level people, right? I need people who have gone through some things, have seen some things before they can come and consult with all different kinds of clients. And so it is very scary to me to think that the experiences that you have as an entry-level team member might be taken away from you. But I think that what I would focus on is the things that can't be automated that we talked about today. The employee relations side of things, the culture initiative side of things, and the recruiting and onboarding side of things. There's like portions of that can be automated, but in the grand scheme of things, it's those parts that need that human touch are the places where HR is going to need more and more people to be really adept.
I'll dovetail a little bit on to that question. How common do you see in industry, and I know this is a little bit of a loaded question because of the hierarchy and different sizes of HR departments, but how common is the adoption of AI at this point in time?
Well, I can only speak for
clearly you've already done
Right,
it,
the
have
world-
embraced it.
Right, the world that I see, and then of course the clients that I work with, and I would say that at this point it is mixed, but the trends, the warnings that I'm seeing from people who know a lot more about this than I do, is that if you don't embrace it, you're not going to survive. And I think that that's an appropriate way to look at it. But I think that it will be the companies that figure out that balance of where it can help you versus where you've over automated and lost the human touch and you've lost the engagement of your teams. I think that the next 10 years will be an interesting experiment of what that looks like. And so I think that focusing on employee engagement and focusing on really making sure that you're creating workplaces where people want to meet is going to be huge.
Yeah, I would go.
And
Glad.
yeah, this is probably not the best time to do something like going into just make it white. Like, if that makes sense. Like, the things that I think are very, very repetitive tasks that are, are probably not that fun either. So not that there's probably lots we can get in with behavioral. Don't cancel me.
I feel like the AI market right now, especially with like stocks and everything, everyone's creating AI becomes everyone wants to get in a business. It's kind of similar to when the internet was starting. Like, everyone was creating browser, everyone was creating internet company,
Right.
and stocks are inflated, then settle afresh.
Mhm.
I think that's an adequate AI thing, but
Right. Hopefully we learned something of your first example. But quite possible. I think that I think you're right. I think it's really cool though, because we need lots and lots of different people to look at it from lots and lots of different perspectives. And so I think that there's a lot of utility in that. The things that will fail will help us all out.
I have one last question, real quick. What would your imparting advice be to students really trying to get into the HR industry right now in this AI world? What should their focus be on?
So I think that if you are, technologically inclined, learning how to be involved in the development of the agentic AI would be super smart, because I do think that's where a lot of this is headed. And if you really enjoy being part of more of a software engineering side of things, that could be really fun. But when it comes to HR leadership, I would say, really, really working hard to develop the soft skills, the people skills, and also learning using this. If you are not already using it as a student, you need to be using it, because you need to be seeing how it's making things easier and what you can contribute to innovation as you enter the workforce. Because again, I think that everyone I hired, my youngest team member on my team is 25, and every day I tell her she just blows me away, because she has just the best ideas. Not every leader is going to be like that. Don't give your ideas to those people. Maybe that's what I'll leave you with.
Thank you.
you want your pen better.
Yeah, give me my pen.
Thank you.